Alright, I've done this like a bajillion times, but hello, I'm Andrew. I make music, I produce beats, and then I sing on them. And all of you guys keep asking me how I make my beats. And so welcome to episode 1 of Hey Bro, how did you make that? Today, we'll be going through a song that some of you guys seem to like, which is this one. And yeah, I'm just gonna play only the beat for it. Alright, yeah, whatever, you get the point. Okay, cool. So there's a lot of stuff I need to go over. And so the reason why I made this a series is because in 10 minutes, I'm probably not going to be able to get through absolutely everything. And so hopefully throughout like the series, I'll just keep like explaining more and more stuff. So if you're hoping for like some sort of hardcore comprehensive guide on how I make everything, like bro, you're asking too much of me, bro. Like I got things to do outside of this music thing, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, okay, quick disclaimer before we get started. Let me read my script again. To be a good producer, you need to be a good listener. So listen to lots of music. Listen to things you like and things you don't like. Things that are in your preferred genre and things that aren't in your preferred genre. Whether it's mainstream or niche, it doesn't matter. And just because it's niche doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than mainstream stuff. What's important is that you ask why you don't like or do like things and be as specific as possible. And that'll be like a recurring theme. Like, be really specific with everything you do. Like, don't brush over things unless it's intentional. But, like, you know, just be specific. Okay, first thing, melodies, alright? So, there are 2 ways you can make melodies as far as I know. You can, like, make them from scratch or you can sample them. And so here I sampled them. I sampled this song. I'll play, like, a little bit of it. I'm pretty sure I can't play a lot of it because of, like, copyright. But, yeah, I'll just... Yeah, so I got this song, and one thing I look for in samples are segments that are clean, so with no drums. And in a future video, I might show like what I do if there is a sample that I like that just so happens to have drums. I like samples that have many elements that have like they can have complementary elements to them or can be centered, so I get a sense of how I could layer them. And I like parts that start with vocals or have vocal elements that I can chop. Yeah. Okay, boom. Next part, chopping up. Okay, so when I chop up my sample, the first thing I do is I do this smart tempo function in Logic. So Logic is like the software I use, which is like an upgraded version of GarageBand. And this smart tempo thing will like look at the sample and it'll be like, oh yeah, the sample BPM is this. And I'm like, oh, bet. So like knowing that information, I can click on this thing here. Yeah. And there's a thing that says apply project tempo to region and downbeat. And so what that'll do is it'll align the whole sample for me like perfectly for like each bar. And that's really helpful. So then what I do is then I chop it up based on the chords. So in this case, every 4 bars, it's like a cycle of chords. And so every 4 or 8 bars, I'll like chop off the sample. All right. And then in my head, or I'll manually do it, like I'll cut it up and I'll cut it up so that I cut it when the chords change. And what I've done is I've made segments. So in this case, it seems that the chords change every bar. And so that means if I chop it up more, like in this part here, I'll make sure that anything that was in bar 1, I can move it around, I can chop it up, I can reverse it, but it has to stay in bar 1 because it has to stay in that chord because that chord's like the first chord. All right. I might go into vocal chopping in another video. Like, how do you make nice vocal chops? How do you get something that's like not clunky? I'll go through that in another video maybe. But yeah, once I've got all my samples and all the stuff that I like that's clean, I'll stack them on top of each other, kind of like this. And I'll have to work on layering them because one problem is that all of the samples that you'll have are all mastered consistently, right? Because it's one sample. So it means that like in terms of at least of stereo-ness or like how wide it is, it's all the same. So you need to make some of it wider than others. Otherwise, it's all going to kind of clash and be really gross. So one creative way I like to do that is by adding this thing called chorus. I don't know if you can read that, but there's a thing here called chorus. And there's like a bajillion other like examples of like chorusy type things like like I can just like not add anything, or I could add like a phaser, which is like really good because it like makes it wider and it helps it poke out of the mix. So like I'll show you an example. All right, so this is it with nothing. This is the flat sample, just like nothing. Okay, and then this one is the one with chorus. And it's like wider, wow. And then this one's the phaser. Alright, and then I have it all together and it's like this. Okay, boom. Alright, is there anything that I missed? Let me check my script. Yeah, I mean, just cut out the low end of everything to leave room for the bass as well. Okay, boom! Alright, we did the first part. Holy guacamole. I mean, I just need to sit down, appreciate the fact that I just did that, because I screwed that up like 20 times. Alright. Andale. Next part is the drums, and this is the drums. Oh, let me go to a more consistent part. These are the drums, alright? Alright, okay. Before we get into drums, again, this idea of being specific. So be intentional with the sounds you use. People have this tendency, or like a lot of producers have this tendency where they'll have like a bajillion drum kits open and they'll just scroll through every single sound until they find something that they like, and then they'll just put it in. And that's like potentially really good because your sample size is huge, and so probably in that huge sample size there's something that's like good. But the problem is that if you come across, like, let's just say hypothetically you scroll through all these sounds and they're all really bad, then your brain will start thinking on a relative basis, and it'll just start to pick the best thing out of all the bad sounds you picked, as opposed to like an actually good sound that fits. So what I like to do is to think like what snare or what kick or what hi-hats or what perks or whatever the heck I'm gonna add, what fits. And then I'll think of a couple ideas, and then I'll search and seek those particular ideas. And then if they don't work in reality, I'll just be like, okay, we'll try something else. You know, but I'm trying to be intentional with the sounds that I use. Okay, anyway, so here for the snare, it's just most of the time snares are on like beat 3 or beats 2 and 4 depending on the BPM. Sometimes I'll like do way more other stuff with the snares, and maybe in a future video I'll go over like what I do. But nothing here, okay? Next thing is kicks. All right, let me check my script again. All right, boom. All right, so there are many different types of kicks. There are also many different types of snares, but I'm not going to get into that. But there are many different types of kicks, all right? Of the ones that at least I know, there are like really aggressive knocky ones. There are thumpy ones, like kind of like this. Oh, crap. What did I do? Oh, yeah, okay, like this one. Thump. Then there's like high-end ones, like the ones you might hear in like EDM or something, I don't know. And then there are like the more looser ones, which tend to be like in bands, like real actual kick drums, like, and they tend to be like actual recordings and stuff. Those are cool. And there's like many other ones too, like I'm sure there's like a bajillion other ones that I forgot to mention. But basically my principle is think about the kick bass combination sonically. So you want the kick to match the bass, so that when it side chains, it sounds right, and that neither are going over the other. And so what I mean by that is if I get a bass that's like really aggressive and has lots of high end, then I want a kick that also has some high end so that it matches. And it just sounds more satisfying that way. So in this case, I use the guitar bass, which has a lot of like low end, but not a lot of high end. It's just like a bass, right? It's like doo, 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 doo. So when you put it together, thumps, and it and like you heard it in the beat, like it kind of thumps and follows the beat a little better, and like neither feel like out of balance with each other. So yeah, that's like the principle that I go in with. And again, just be intentional with the sounds you use. So think, what kind of kick do I want? Do I want a thumpy kick? Do I want a knocking kick? Do I want a high-end kick? Do I want a looser type of kick? And I was thinking about the kick-snare combo. A very basic trappy R&B-ish type of like kick-snare combo should sound something like this. It'll be a 2-bar phrase, and it'll literally be just this. Oh, frick. 1, 2, 1, 2. As far as I can tell, like I think that's like the basics of it, and then you fill it out based on how much you want emphasized like how many like points you want emphasized, and like what flows, right? And like that depends on the BPM, that depends on like what music you listen to and what you've been exposed to and what you like and what you don't like, and whatever. So like once I get to this point, I'm like, okay, I want to emphasize certain parts of the beat. Like I want the beginning to be emphasized. I want the place in between beats 2 and 3 to be emphasized. I want beats 4 to be emphasized, and I want beat 2 of bar 2 to be emphasized. So it's like dun 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 dun. I don't know. I feel like I'm yapping, but like, so that's just what I'm thinking. And so now from here on out, when I add the hi-hats and I add the perks, I want to try and help encourage that a little bit. So yeah, hi-hats. Okay, so hi-hats tend to be like, in my opinion, some of the most ignored like parts of a beat. Like I've seen so many beats where they literally just get the thing and put it on semi-quavers and just loop it, which is like, maybe that's suitable sometimes, but like I just think there could be more effort done to it. I'm gonna show this thing that I do that a lot of other people sometimes do, which is like this swingy thing where it's not full swing, but it's like half swing. And so if I zoom in here, you'll see that these hi-hats, these two bottom ones, don't actually align with the lines. And I've actually what's the word, like manually adjusted like each one up to like I think 2 bars, so that they're all just like kind of more human, like they're just a bit off. And I've made them a little, like I made them lag on the beat. And like in your head you might be like, well, that's stupid because it doesn't like follow and now the beat sounds all janky. So what I do is I add this hi-hat, which tends to be a more like sort of impacted hi-hat. So like it's like hit 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 type of sound, as opposed to like this one, which is like kind of just something else. It's like less impact. And with this hit 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 hi-hat, I'm making it on every beat so that it makes the listener think in terms of an even meter while still having these hi-hats go crazy so that it feels more human. Okay, next thing, widening of hi-hats. Oh, true. Okay, so people, at least as far as I've seen, like people tend to widen hi-hats by pushing it left or right, which is fine, maybe. But the problem is that if you have lots of other things, then you also have to make them go left and right too. Which means that like you just have lots of things going left and right, and then there's like space issues, and then yeah, so like maybe you need to get a little bit more creative with how you widen hi-hats. So there's this thingy in Logic called sample delay, where it'll push whatever thing is in your like horizontal line, and it'll make you go left and it'll make you go right, and you can choose it to delay the left or the right side, so that what will happen is there'll be this widening effect and it'll move slightly in a certain direction. So for example, this hi-hat is completely mono at the moment without the thing. Okay, and then I add this little thingy in it and it goes like this. And it's like to the right, like slightly to the right, and it feels wider. And so I do one to the right and one to the left, or sometimes I just do one to the right, I don't know. I just do it so like to whatever I feel. And so like now it feels wide, it feels a bit more kind of not just straight down the middle. It feels different, it feels more human, or at least that was like the goal. Okay, that's hi-hats. Did I miss anything in my script? Okay, hi-hat rolls. Yep, hi-hat rolls. So with hi-hat rolls, people also have this tendency to just make them equidistant from each other, which isn't, again, not necessarily wrong or anything. You do whatever you want to do, but like you can also manipulate the meter of the beat based on how you roll it. So here, like I made these two hi-hats closer to each other. So like whatever direction like they're more clumped towards, it'll emphasize the next sort of like next subdivision. So like for example here, they're more clumped to the left. So I'm emphasizing this beat here, which is one of the ones I wanted to emphasize. And so I have that like here. And it's like, it's a really tiny little thing. Like it's such like a little high note, but it's about those like subconscious like emphasizing of certain beats that the listener won't actively think about, but they'll sort of feel in the beat. And then yeah, I added like an open hat, whatever. It's just an open hat. I had like open hats on beat 2 a lot. It's just a habit. Oh, it's just a habit. All right. Is there anything else I need? Oh yeah, true. Yeah, hi-hats. So like obviously here in this case, the hi-hats don't really have any gaps. But you could totally have gaps in them. Like, you know, I could totally like just delete these and like make more bounce, right? So like the more gaps there are, the heavily emphasized certain beats are, to the point where it starts to sound really kind of like jerky, bouncy type of thing. And like the more consistent they are, like the more vibey it can be, or more consistent the meter will be. And again, it just depends what you want. So yeah, I mean, like I wanted it to be consistent, so I kept it consistent. All right, boom. Next part. All right, perks. All right, perks. Again, be really, really specific on what sounds you want. So for perks specifically, I think, or at least I found, good drum kits that have been put together well and by people that make lots of music and even like make their own sounds, which is perfect. Like those people tend to make very consistent perk lines in their drum kits. Like when you use perks, find a drum kit that really is good and like really works for the song, and try to use a lot of perks from like a small range of drum kits for that song. So like for example, all these perks actually just came from one drum kit from some guy called Kid Flame, who's like a really good producer that I found. Beep boop beep type sounds, right? And like there's just like a whole big perk line of just like all these type of sounds that all just fit a certain aesthetic. And I went through it and I was like, that totally fits. So then, and yeah, and for these, I generally only push these left and right. I don't really widen them because I want them to be little bits of ear candy that just sit in your ear for a little bit. That's how I use perks. I'm not saying that's the right way to use perks. That's just how I use it. And so yeah, let me see if there's anything I missed in my notes. Oh yeah, think about the value of empty space versus full space. So obviously I didn't put a sound in literally every little tiny little millisecond of the beat, right? There's a lot of value in empty space with your perks. You don't want to put perks everywhere. You just want to like dot it with like ear candy. Think about where it fits, where there's space for a sound. So like obviously I don't want perks constantly going in when the kick's going, because the kick's gonna be just going over the perks and you can't really fully appreciate the perk. And yeah, and then it just depends, like, but just be intentional in terms of like leaving space or filling space. Okay, boom, last part as far as I can remember, the bass. All right, so with the bass, again, there's many different kinds of basses. There's 808s, there's guitar basses, there's synthesized basses, and then like within the range of synthesized basses and 808s and guitars, there's like a bajillion different types of guitars. There's like a bajillion different types of 808s. There's like wide ones, thin ones, bassy ones, distorted ones, blah 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 blah. Again, think about what fits, as well as think about what's easy to mix, because basses that are really strong or basses that are really overpowering can be really hard to mix when you add vocals into it, or add layers and stuff. So think about that as well. I personally am a huge fan of guitar basses because I think they're really smooth and they fit my style. But I have used lots of 808s. I've been trying to use them more. I used to use them a ton, but like I don't really use them anymore. So yeah, this is the 808, the bass, sorry, the guitar bass. It's actually a stock one on my Logic thing. And yeah, so it's very bassy. And so yeah, like in some of my songs, I like edit the bass and I'll like distort it or like widen it or add things to it, or like emphasize like certain tones. Like you can bump up like certain parts of like the mid-low frequency to make it pop out in the mix more. I'll talk about that maybe in another video, because I didn't really do it here. Again, like try to make a bass and a kick that match. So let's just say you picked like a certain kick, then you can maybe pick a bass to match that, or if you pick the bass first, you can get a kick to match that. But think about trying to get them to match. And yeah, like my basses have like runs in them, so like I don't like basses that like are boring and just like stay the same. Like I like to add rhythm to them, again emphasizing beats. So like here I'm like emphasizing those beats I mentioned, and like I'm adding like runs to it according to the key, just to make it more interesting. But I mean, it's up to you. And yeah, to like find the key and to find the chords for the bass and stuff, you can get the sample, cut out all the high end, so you only leave the bass notes, and then just like find them with like an auto, like a tuning plugin or something. And yeah, side chaining is probably the last big thing I want to mention. I don't know how other people sidechain or like how much they think about it, but depending on how you sidechain, that can affect the way the kick bass interaction works and how it bounces on the track. So I was told by Bertway, who's like another artist who was really helpful, that if you drop the release to something really quick on your compressor or sidechaining thing, then the thumping will be really like thumpy. So like for example in this song, my release on my sidechaining thing is like the absolute bare minimum, and so it thumps a little harder. So yeah, a faster release or a lower number on the release means it's going to be more thumpy, which is exactly what I'm going for. I got a thumpy kick, I got a low end bass, so I want it to thump more. Yeah, and so just think about how you sidechain to like change that kick bass interaction, and overall just think about how everything interacts with each other. And yeah. I didn't go over vocals, because I think my vocals suck. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll go over vocals. Yeah. See you in episode 2. I don't know what song I'm gonna do for episode 2 yet, but expect one like, I don't know, next week or something. All right, boom, big shack. Bye bye.